Do you feel like your creativity is stuck in a rut? What if I told you that your creative and or writer's block may not be a roadblock, but actually a sign that you're about to get through your next creative breakthrough? Well, in this episode of the Author Switch podcast, I'm going to be talking about the psychology behind writer's block and give you some actionable strategies that you can use to bust through that block and become more creative and get your book done.
Are you an entrepreneur, small business owner, or consultant looking to boost your authority, influence, and impact? The Author Switch podcast with best-selling, award-winning author Carma Spence is your answer. Tune in for actionable advice, powerful strategies, and engaging interviews to turn on your author switch and take your business to the next dimension.
The Author Switch.
Hi, and welcome to the Author Switch podcast. I am your host, Carma Spence, and I help executive coaches, business leaders, and consultants write, publish, and market their client attracting books so that they can grow their business. In this episode of the Author Switch podcast, I'm going to be talking about what for some people is a taboo topic, and that is writer's block. The first thing I want to cover is the myth of writer's block. There are so many people out there who either believe that it is actually a myth and doesn't exist, and others who believe it exists, but they don't fully understand it. Well, I've spent the last year and a half to 2 years researching writer's block and the 6 root causes of this particular creative block. And I'm going to be talking about some of the initial results of this research in this episode of the podcast. Now, I said there's 6 root causes. That's because writer's block is not a thing, a disease all by itself. It actually has more in common with a sneeze than it does a cold because it is a symptom of something else. And it's that something else that causes a writer's block. So, for example, with a sneeze can be caused by someone blowing pepper in your face. It can be caused by pollen in the air. It can be caused by a pet walking by. It can be caused by a cold, the flu. There are lots of different causes of a sneeze. So, if you have a sneeze, you don't necessarily know what you have unless you know what's causing the sneeze. Same thing with writer's block. You may be blocked in your writing, but why? Why are you blocked in your writing? More than likely, actually, period, end of sentence, it will be one of the following 6 root causes. The first one is mindset. Now, this is when something in the way you're thinking about either writing in general or the topic at hand is getting in your way. And this can be your attitude towards writing, your attitudes toward writing this particular project, your attitude toward writing this particular subtopic of that writing project. It could be your own inner self-talk. It could be imposter syndrome. So even each of the root causes has multiple things. So the first step in getting over writer's block is understanding what is causing it. Now, something I've also discovered while doing this research is that even though there are 6 root causes, you can have more than one at a time and they play on each other. So, for example, if you had, say, 3 of them, if you could get rid of 1 or 2, it might reduce the effect of the third one, therefore unblocking you, even though one of the root causes is still there. That'll make more sense a little bit later in the podcast, but I just wanted to give you a little heads up on that one. So, the first root cause is mindset. And the best way to overcome that particular one is to proactively develop a growth mindset. Now, I did an entire webinar about growth mindset for authors, and I will put a link to that in the show notes. And I believe I've also done some podcast episodes about that. I will make sure to add that to the resource section as well. The second root cause of writer's or creative block is emotional. And that can be something that is temporary. So, for example, maybe while you're in the middle of your writing your book, a loved one dies. That grief can block you. It's really hard to concentrate on anything other than your grief while that's happening. But it could also be something else. It could be a fear of success, a fear of failure, a fear of ridicule, a fear of visibility, any kind of fear. Fear is one of the major causes of writer's block in the emotional root cause area. Also, things such as stress or anxiety. These are emotional things that we experience that can block us in our writing work and any other kind of work, honestly. Fear of criticism, there's another one. Also, and this one I thought was kind of interesting, past traumas that are triggered by what you're writing about can also block you. So this happens a lot when you're writing a memoir because you'll be writing about maybe a particularly difficult time in your life and maybe you haven't fully processed it. So there's a part of your brain that's trying to protect you and therefore says, don't write about that. Don't write about that because it's just too painful. And so you'll find yourself procrastinating over and over and over again because there's an emotional trigger there. And so you have to kind of figure out what is that emotional trigger. And again, in the second part of the podcast, I will be going over some various ways to fix these. Right now, I'm just going over what the root causes are. The third root cause is now the first two are the most common. They're also the ones that take the most to fix because they tend to be very deeply enrooted. They tend to be habitual. They're just a little bit harder to deal with. And they are often aggravated by this next block, and that is an environmental trigger. Now, a lot of times when we have a mindset or an emotional issue, we will express that in our environment. We'll get cluttered, we'll use dim lighting, we'll do all sorts of things that make our environment less pleasant, and we do it unconsciously. So, clutter in your physical environment is probably the number one environmental thing that can cause us to block. But sometimes the environmental block is completely out of our control. There may be a neighbor doing construction or mowing their lawn, or maybe there's a construction company fixing the road, any kind of noise pollution. It could be traffic if you happen to live in the city. These things can actually cause us to block. And sometimes they're easy to fix, and sometimes you have to wait them out, and sometimes they're not so easy to fix, and you have to leave the environment or create some sort of soundproofing in your writing space so that you're not bothered by those external sounds. Different kinds of lighting. I've been delving into that topic. It's very interesting how bright, specifically natural light, is very conducive to creativity, whereas incandescent dim light tends to depress our mood and can actually cause writer's block. Who knew? There's also scents in your environment. If there's a particular scent that bothers you or triggers an emotion, I mean, it could be something innocuous like maybe somebody's eating a pear and somehow the smell of pear is attached to some emotional trauma you had. Now every time you smell pear, and I have no idea why I chose pear. I have no idea why I chose pear, but we'll just go with it. So every time you smell pear, it triggers on a subconscious level this emotional block, and it can create writer's block. So often, one of the first things to do to help you unblock is to check your environment. There may be something deeper that's blocking you, but if you can at least get your environment conducive, and that can include ergonomics, which leads me to the fourth blocker, and that is your health. If your ergonomics are incorrect, that can block you. If you haven't had enough sleep, that can block you. If you're dehydrated, if you haven't been eating properly, like if you eat a lot of sugar, I probably am not a very good writer around Christmas because I do like my cookies. And when I bake cookies, I often get the sugar yucks because I'm eating the dough, I'm eating the cookies, I'm eating the, oh. Oh, can't write around Christmas. Anyway, if you want to write better, taking better care of your health can help. That may include taking your medication or not writing while you're taking certain kinds of medication. So, for example, if you have a cold, it's very possible that you're taking a cold medication to decongest you. And for some reason, however you react to that particular medication may be causing a block. So that's another block that you can undo, like check your ergonomics. Make sure that, your feet are firm on the ground, you've got your elbows at the right angle, all those things. And that can help jigger other blocks so that you can at least get writing now. Now, the last two of the six are not necessarily less common, but they're less discussed. The first one is a creative process block. This is usually caused by you have a vision for what you will want to accomplish in your writing, but you lack the skills or a clear pathway to make that vision come true. And this will cause you to block even if you're unaware of the fact that you need those things. It's like you come on, you're like, why can't I do this? Well, it turns out maybe you don't know how to do it or you don't know how to get there. And the easiest way to fix that block is to take classes in various skills that you don't have. And the other one is to hire a mentor who can often help you see the gaps in your knowledge, in your skills, whatever, and help you get over those. A creative block could also be you going down what I call a writing rabbit hole. That means, for example, you have a vision of where you want to go and you start writing, and somehow you make a decision that kind of veers you away from that vision. Well, your subconscious goes, hold up, wait, you just took a wrong turn, stop. The thing is, you may not be consciously aware that you just took a wrong turn. This happens a lot more often in fiction, but it can happen in nonfiction as well. And it is more prone to happen if you don't start with an outline, which is why I tell you to embrace the turtle way and write your outline before you write your book, because it helps you not go down writing rabbit holes, not get stuck, and it helps avoid that particular version of writer's block. The last and sixth root cause of writer's block is a spiritual disconnection. When you become disconnected from the divine, from the creative force of all, from God, you can get blocked because God is the source of your creativity. Now, this block can happen when you have a spiritual crisis. You've suddenly had a crisis of faith. That can cause a writer's block. But sometimes it's a little bit more subtle. And it turns out that what's happening is that what you're writing is out of alignment with your faith, your beliefs, your values. And that can block you. That's another way that your little subconscious is going, whoa, hold up. You've just gone down a dead end. Do not go there. So sometimes you have to take a step back and figure out. And honestly, this particular kind of writer's block, the spiritual kind, has been the hardest to research because almost nobody talks about it. And when they do talk about it, they don't talk about it in relation to writer's block. So I've had to piece it together, but it does exist. And when you listen to people's stories of their block, so often you can hear this particular block in how they are talking about it. So I know it exists. Now we're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsor. And when we're back, I'm going to be talking about how to bust through writer's block. My name is Carma Spence, and I'm the author of Serve Up Your Book, a book about book marketing throughout the entire life cycle of your book, from before you start writing all the way to after you launch. A lot of authors don't think about book marketing until the book's already written. The problem with that is your book may sell or it may not. But if you bake marketing into your book from the get-go, you have a much better chance of reaching bestseller, of selling more books, and converting readers into clients. I think the most surprising thing that most authors that I've talked to who have read the book have found is the idea that book marketing starts before you even come up with your book idea. You bake the marketing in from the get-go. When you do that, you are much more likely to have success with your book. And most authors just don't think about it that early. Do you want to sell more books? Then read this book. Serve Up Your Book, available now on Amazon. Hello, and welcome back to the Author Switch podcast. I'm your host, Carma Spence, and I help executive coaches, business leaders, and consultants write, publish, and market their client attracting books so that they can grow their businesses. Before the break, I was talking about the 6 root causes of writer's block, and I talked a little bit about the myth of writer's block and why some people think it doesn't exist when it actually does. And there's actually quite a bit of scientific research about writers and creative blocks in general. Now, what I'd like to talk about are some actionable tactics and strategies that you can use right now to bust through the 6 types of writer's block. Now, if you don't know what your root cause is, I have a writer's block assessment that you can take. It's completely free, no strings attached. All you have to do is go to authorneering.com/block assessment. And you can take that for free, and it'll give you a really good idea of which of the 6 blocks is blocking you. And if it can't figure it out, it will tell you that it may be a multi thing. And then I invite you to have a conversation with me, and I might be able to help you figure that one out. Free, no strings attached. I created this specifically to help you get to the root cause, because if you do not know what the root cause of your writer's block is, there's no way you can fix it. Honestly. There's so much advice out there on the internet, and it says walk around the block or do this or do that. But the thing is, if you use a cure that helps with mindset and your problem is with the emotions, it may not work. If your block is caused by your environment and you're walking around the block, how does that help? It might help with a health one. So you need to understand what the root cause of your writer's block is before you start trying to fix it, because otherwise you're going to use the wrong remedy. So here are some ideas for different remedies that address the various root causes of writer's block. So the first one was mindset. And some of the best mindset fixes, they're kind of long term, meaning you usually have to do them for like 21 days or so to build up a habit. And I highly recommend doing them over and over again. One is affirmations. Affirmations can help you nip negative thinking, or is what some people like to say is stinking thinking. Get rid of that. Mindfulness can help. I've done an entire episode on mindfulness. I will drop a link to that in the show notes. Visualization is also a good remedy for mindset issues, and gratitude journaling. I highly, highly recommend gratitude journaling. It has gotten me out of more than one mindset pickle, and I highly recommend it. And I recommend just all you have to do is, if you can't come up with three is ideal. If you can't come up with 3 things you're grateful for every day, then at least one. Start with one. Every day, something happened to you that you can be grateful for. Write it down every day. And that can get you through quite a few mindset pickles. The second root cause was emotional. And those tactics that I just talked about can help with emotional ones. But one I found that is very effective and helps you release negative emotions, because it's really all about release. Sometimes it's about forgiveness, but that is going through the emotional cycle. This is often called the grief cycle, where you first go through denial, because most people do start off denying, I don't have writer's block. I'm just procrastinating. I've heard that one. Then there's anger. Why am I blocked? Why am I blocked? Why can't I write? That's the second phase. Then there's bargaining. Well, maybe if I did this, I could get this done. Or maybe if I did this, I could get this done. And as you notice, where are you on this cycle? You know how close you are to breaking through. Then the fourth part of that cycle is depression. You may decide that you are very unhappy that you haven't gotten your writing done and you may decide to find solace in the bottom of a Ben& Jerry's ice cream pint. Or maybe that's just me. If you're there, then at least you've gotten through the first few cycles. The last one is acceptance. If you can accept that this emotional trigger exists, then you can fight it off and well, maybe not even fight it off, resolve it. That's usually the best, because the best way out of an emotion is through it. You have to experience it. I remember when I lost my grandmother in 1984, it was really, really hard on me because I found out on my way to England to be an exchange student for the summer. Yay! I was gonna be gone for 8 weeks, and my entire family was gonna be mourning my grandmother together, and I was in another country. And I was really close to my grandmother. I loved her very much. I still miss her. Anyway, at first, my first reaction was, "Okay, I'm gonna push down this emotion," and I did that for 4 years. For 4 years, I would not allow myself to grieve the loss of my grandmother. And it was after a few years, I finally went, enough is enough." I got depressed every Thanksgiving and Christmas because I kind of attached her to those holidays every year. And when I finally allowed myself to experience the grief and say goodbye, and I actually created a ritual where I wrote my grandmother a letter telling her how much I loved her and how much I missed her. And then I burnt it so that it could, I don't know, go to heaven to where I hope she is. And it's amazing how much that worked. I am no longer depressed on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's because I went through the emotion. And that's the thing, sometimes you have to identify that emotion and go through it to the other side, and then you'll be unblocked, or hopefully you will be. There might be another emotion on the other side, who knows? But then you know what to do because 'cause you've gone through the first one, right? Alright, so the next block you can clear up is an environmental block, and often I say this is the first block to try to fix because this one aggravates all the other blocks. It just it's just insidious. So the first thing I recommend doing is decluttering. Oh my gosh, it was only a few weeks ago. I am so busy that, like, things would pile up on my desk and pile up on my desk and pile up on my desk. And every, like, weekend, I'd try to find some time to go through it, but I would never get through it. And it would be disorganized and it was driving me crazy. So I bought an organizer and now I have everything in nice little folders so that I know exactly where to go. It's not a pile anymore. It's organized, it's clean, it's and it was amazing just doing that one little thing, decluttering my desk, so I now actually have desk space rather than piles of paper everywhere. Bam! Increase my productivity, like, at least 5 times. At least 5 times. So decluttering is the first line of defense when it comes to an environmental block. I also recommend getting better lighting. You wanna have something that's bright, not so bright that you're, like, going, "Ah." Not like the light I use to shoot video, but you want a clean, well-lit place. That's what you want. And, I will be going into later, I will probably do an entire episode that's all about environment because the information I am uncovering, I haven't fully digested it yet, but it's pretty amazing, the research that's out there about just lighting, not to mention temperature. That's another thing you can fix, is fix the temperature. Apparently, about 70 degrees Fahrenheit is the perfect temperature for mental clarity. Too hot and you get foggy, too cold and you get distracted. 70 degrees. Isn't that crazy? If scent is a thing, there are certain scents that help you be more clear. So you can try essential oils. Lemon essential oil is known to help clear the mind. So you can try having some lemon essential oil. You might also try scented candles. Vanilla's supposed to be very good. You might find I don't think I've ever seen a lemon candle, but there might be one out there that would work. And then plants. Having the negative ions in your environment from plants, not to mention the nice fresh oxygen that they have. Now, I admit not every environment is conducive to plants, and if you have pets, sometimes plants aren't such a good idea, but if you have the ability to have a good plant in your environment, it can help. Next is health. Drink enough water. I drink 2 of these a day, minimum. I should be drinking 3 or 4, but 2 is minimum, so stay hydrated, and I mean just water, okay? I know that some people don't like the flavor of water, which is odd to me. It might be I mean, I will admit there are different flavors of water. Different tap waters have different flavors. I mean, the tap water in Southern California tastes different than the tap water in Northern California, which tastes different than the water in New York. In fact, there's been if you talk to bakers, they will tell you that the tap water in whatever city you are will affect how the bread is made. So yes, there are different flavors of water. Then get purified water. Purified water usually doesn't have that much of a flavor unless it's stored in a plastic bottle. Then sometimes it gets a little plasticky. So drink as much water as you can. If you cannot handle water at all, then add a little bit of lemon or lime or orange. You can float some people like cucumber. I don't, but that can make water more refreshing. Stay hydrated. Second thing is if you are on medication, please take it. If if a doctor's telling you to take medication for your health, please take it. If you are taking temporary medication because of a particular disease, you may want to take a break from your writing if it's affecting you. Get enough sleep. Get enough sleep. If you need a nap, take a nap before you write. Try to fit in enough sleep. So those are 3 biohacks, and then there's ergonomics. Make sure that your desk is at the right height, your chair is at the right height, your keyboard's at the right place, your screen is at the right place. In fact, I actually have my laptop, I use a laptop, I have it on a lift, and I use a Bluetooth keyboard so that I can have my ergonomics correct. And I've set it so that basically the camera is like eye level. Basically eye level. That's about the right height for a screen. So you want it so that your eyes are looking mid to about the top 1/3 of your screen. And then you know that that it's at the right height. If it's lower than that, it can cause you to bend your head wrong, which causes a lot of shoulder pain. Check those various things to make sure that your workspace is conducive to good posture and health. Next up is creative blocks. Beyond understanding what's causing the block, which you'd probably uncover just understanding what I talked about in the first half, there are other things you can do to get creative juices flowing. One is doing creative exercises. I have episodes of my Coffee with Karma podcast that provides you with some fun exercises. I will put them in the show notes. Also, if you join my Author Switch Club Facebook group, I have all sorts of interesting, fun exercises in there that you can find. So there's not a lack of creativity exercises out there. There are card decks you can get on Amazon that have them. There's one that's called Creative Blocks, and it comes with a little block. You can Google creativity exercises. There's no lack of creativity exercises out there. Hiring a mentor. Hiring a mentor can help because what a mentor can do is listen to what you're saying, observe what you're doing, and identify gaps that you don't see. I have mentors myself. Everyone should have a mentor, coach, whatever you want to call them, but someone who's helping you become a better writer and take classes to improve skills. For example, I'm planning on taking a class in humorous writing because there's a series of short stories I would like to write that are humorous, and I don't feel like my humor writing skills are up to stuff, so I'm going to take a class. You can also read books. I have a few books that are gonna get me jump started for the classes, so there you go. Learn the skills you need, get help to see the gaps. When you sit down to write, you don't always have to be writing toward a specific goal. You can be writing just to get the creative juices flowing. And finally, spiritual blocks. Journaling is a very good way to get through spiritual blocks. Meditation, doing a lot of self-reflection and digging deep. Check out last week's episode where no, wasn't last week's. It's the week before where I will put it in the show notes. It's all about the heroine's journey. You can walk yourself through the heroine's journey because that's an introspective journey to identify your spiritual blocks and really take a look at what the writing project that you're working on. Does it align with your values? Because if it doesn't, maybe you shouldn't be writing it. And then a couple of just general multimodal tips that you can use that can help you get through writer's block. One is to break your project into smaller tasks. One of the blocks I hear a lot is people get overwhelmed. They're like, oh my gosh, it's a book. It's a book and the book is big and it's, oh my gosh. You write a book one sentence at a time. And you can write those sentences in paragraphs, and you can write those paragraphs in subheads. So what you do is you take your big book, you create an outline of the larger thoughts, then you break the larger thoughts into smaller thoughts, and then you break them into smaller thoughts until you get to the size of a thought that doesn't overwhelm you. And you write that, and then you write the next one, and then you write the next one. And it may mean that you write your book 5 minutes at a time, or 15 minutes at a time, or 20 minutes, or half an hour, or an hour. It doesn't matter as long as you're getting it done. And one other idea is what's called a creative ritual. I talked about this in my episode about getting into the flow. You create a creativity ritual, which is basically just a series of activities that tells your brain, I'm about to write. And it can be as simple as grabbing your favorite notebook and a pen. It could mean sitting in your favorite writing corner. It could mean lighting a scented candle. It could mean whatever works for you. It takes no more than 5 minutes. Well, okay, it could take 15 minutes. 5 to 15 minutes of a series of simple activities that you can do, and you do it every time before you write so that eventually your brain goes, "Oh, she's doing that thing again. She must be about to write." And again, I will put a link to the show notes about flow, and I go into the whole ritual thing there. So there you have it, the 6 causes of writer's block and actionable strategies that you can use to break through them. Again, if you do not know what your particular writer's block is, I highly recommend taking my writer's block assessment at authorneering.com/block assessment. This is Carma Spence saying ciao for now. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Author Switch podcast. If you enjoyed today's show and want to support its mission, here's how to help. First, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your engagement helps my channel grow and reach more aspiring and established authors. Your ratings and reviews are invaluable. They help me reach more listeners and continue delivering top-notch content. To catch up on past episodes, including those no longer available on podcast platforms, visit authorswitch.com/episodes. There, you can choose to watch or listen to your favorite episodes at your convenience. If you'd like to show additional support, consider dropping a tip in the tip jar at buymeacoffee.com/Carma Spence. Your contributions help keep the podcast running and are greatly appreciated. Thank you for being a part of the Author Switch community. Until next time, keep writing.